Hello and welcome to this week's encouragement video. I'm Pastor David Beaver, and this is August 20th, and it's 2020. We are now officially 6 months, I believe it is, into COVID-19, and it's finally hit my house. My nephew Zachary has been tested positive with COVID, and he lives with us here. And so, very exciting times here. We are now on a current lockdown for 14 days from last Friday. So, that's what's new in my household. And but today's encouragement video, I want to give you a little background on this. So, a couple weeks ago, as you know, I've been doing some how to share your faith or reasons to share your faith um, with people because I do believe that this is probably one of the greatest times we've had available to us to share our faith. There's a lot of people that are um, living in a hopeless situation. There's not a lot of peace. And so this is the opportunity for us, the church, the Big C church, to actually share our faith with those that don't have that hope and that faith. So a couple weeks ago, during one of our prayer meetings out on the courtyard, on Monday morning, that we have a new lady who's been attending our church, and her name is Wendy. And she talked a little bit about her faith, and then Pastor Billy asked her to share her testimony with us at the end of that. And it was beautiful. And I realized that we don't do that often. We do not share our testimonies as a church with one another frequently enough. So Pastor Billy and I were talking about that, and so I want to start this um, every once in a while series here with some testimonies. And this week we have the privilege of talking with Ray Robinson. He has a very interesting testimony. And this is a man who I admire. This is a man who I respect and have for many years. He has been on our board, as you'll hear. And he has been a part of this church since 1985 and in leadership for most of that time. He has raised six beautiful children, all serving the Lord in many capacities and fully. And I'm just very proud of him. I'm very proud to know him, I should say, and the whole family. So, without any further ado, this is Ray Robinson's testimony story. I asked three questions. How did you come to awaken to the love of God? How have you grown in the love of God? And how do you live out the love of God? Taking our purpose statement and applying it to his testimony and his Christian life. So I hope you enjoy this. I know you will. He is a wonderful man, well spoken, and great testimony. Enjoy. Well, Ray Robinson, thank you very much for joining me here today on this beautiful Thursday afternoon. No, it is Monday morning, and Ray has agreed to do this brief interview with us today. And we're starting a new series, Ray, and that series is to do a little bit, go through our church and some of the people in our church and just do some testimonies and find out how you first awakened to the love, to the love of God, and how you've grown in the love of God, and how you've lived out the love of God in your Christian walk. So I'm just going to ask you the first question: how and when did you first awaken to the love of God, right?
Well, hi, David. And yeah, it's a pleasure to be here. I'm very happy to be able to do this. It was very interesting when you first asked me. I had never thought about telling my story in terms of awakening to the love of God, growing in the love of God, and living out the love of God. And yet it fits so perfectly. So I'm very happy to be able to do this. It's a new way to tell it, I suppose, for me. But I'll give you the summarized version. I've been around a few years, so a lot has happened. But I first gave my heart to the Lord when I was in Sunday school. It came about because my brother, who's 2 years younger than me, had an injury, pretty significant injury. We were playing soccer, football, in the backyard. One afternoon, my parents were both at work. We were home alone. I was probably about 10 at the time. And I know, shocking, but that was the way it was back then. Um, and my brother fell over and injured the back of his neck. And it was very stiff. And we went inside. And about an hour later, my mum got home from work. And we ended up going down to the hospital, getting x-rays. And it turned out he'd actually broken his neck. The vertebrae were, one of them was clearly fractured and was displaced. It was amazing that he wasn't paralyzed, but he wasn't. And my mother and I prayed over Brian, my brother, in the hospital while we were waiting for surgery and more x-rays to be done and so on. And I saw my brother healed, and that had a remarkable impact on me at that tender age. Um, the fractured vertebrae was not made whole, but the misalignment of the vertebrae was fixed in a way that was truly miraculous. I can't go into all the detail now because we don't have time on this video today. But suffice it to say that I quickly learnt that being taken along to church by my parents on Sundays and singing hymns wasn't all there was to Christianity. You know, this thing was real, and God was real, and he'd had a direct impact in the lives of my brother and I. And so one day in Sunday school, the teacher gave an invitation, and I responded and said, yes, I'd like to give my life to Christ. But that was when I was 10. You know, things change. And in my teen years, particularly the mid-teen years at school, in high school, I was very much influenced by some of the teachers there who were very liberal, atheistic, communistic in many ways. And I basically fell away from my Christian beliefs and was quite a rebel back when I was like 16, 17 years old. When I was 18, I was dragged along unwillingly to a rally that was being held in central London. And yes, Arthur Blessitt was the speaker. Arthur Blessitt was an evangelist from Hollywood, California. He used to go along Hollywood Boulevard, Sunset Boulevard, going in and out of the clubs and witnessing to people down there in the evenings, and had begun a worldwide ministry. And his kind of claim to fame, if you like, is that wherever he went, kind of as a gimmick to begin with, he used to carry a huge wooden cross. And it got him noticed and got him invitations into places. He's been all over the world with this thing. But he was there in London in 1971. And I saw something in him and in the way he spoke and led prayer and so on. He had a relationship with the living God. And I knew I didn't have that, and I wanted that. And so I rededicated my life to Christ at that point. And it's interesting, the following year, he came back for a full-length crusade, and I joined his team doing street witnessing in central London. And we were all given rolls of Dayglow stickers. I've got a Gideon New Testament, see that like that, which has 3 of these faded now stickers still on the front of it. I was given the New Testament when I was in high school. We had a Gideon waiting outside the gates one day, and I got a Gideon New Testament. But we were given rolls of these stickers. And I don't know if it's a Christian thing to do or not, but we went all over the London Underground, sticking these stickers on posters and anywhere we could put them, basically, to draw attention to the crusade. They came off easily. They weren't defacing anything. But it was interesting. A few years ago, actually, maybe a couple of decades ago, I was in a life group, and the Newmans were there, Gary and Karen. And I was telling this story, and Karen's face lit up because she'd been part of Arthur Blessitt's team in Hollywood and had been with him there. And she had these same rolls of stickers that I did. So we were comparing notes. It was quite fun. That was really my awakening to Christ, if you like. And I've never strayed since then. That was my rededication moment.
That's fantastic. I love that you had the Bible and you still have the stickers on it from your high school Gideon Bible. Yeah, that's fantastic. Sometimes people ask why you hold on to things, and then there's some things you hold on to and you're like, I'm glad I held on to this. I didn't know I was going to be interviewed someday for Well, that's fantastic. So then let me ask you the next question. How have you continued to grow in your love of God? How have you continued to stay into discipleship and stay plugged into your faith?
Well, there's so much that's happened down through the years, but a couple of things I'd point to. First was learning to trust God in my finances. Back in the 90s, Margaret and I got into some serious debt, and we knew things were not right spiritually. We went away on a retreat, and we made a commitment to restart tithing to the Lord. We had done that earlier in our marriage, but there had been some times when we had not, and we certainly weren't in the mid-90s. And we knew that that was wrong. And even though we could least afford it, we really were having problems trying to pay the credit cards and the car loans and all the rest of it that added up. But we made a commitment to tithe, to start tithing again. And nobody can really explain how tithing works. You don't do it to get financial blessing, but it comes. You can't help it. And we've been blessed financially more than we ever could possibly deserve. The Lord's been so good to us. There's a terrific story there about over the next few years after we made that decision, how one thing led to another, and we were able to completely get out of that debt and then turn things around and begin some serious saving as well. So that was something that I really had to learn. And from that day to this, we have always tithed on our income, given 10% to the local church. In Malachi, it talks about bringing the whole of the tithe into the storehouse. And for us, the storehouse is Bouquet Canyon Church. So we give our whole tithe to Bouquet Canyon Church before any offerings or gifts that we give to other ministries outside, like maybe the pregnancy center or other groups that we might support from time to time. And the Lord has honored that, and we've been so blessed by the way He's looked after us financially. And then secondly, I'd talk about the way we've learnt to trust the Lord in our health and in His timing. A few years ago, Margaret had a cancer scare, which was pretty upsetting at the time. But, we had to trust the Lord. She went through surgery, chemo, radiation. But the Lord looked after her through that, and she's been clear ever since. It was interesting timing in that right before she discovered the lump, I was laid off from work. At least I was told I was being laid off. I had a few months that they continued to pay me, even though I wasn't going into the office. But I was laid off, and I was like 56, 57 at the time. It was a lot sooner than I had anticipated. So we were not sure how the finances were going to work out. But as it turned out, I then had the time to be able to support Margaret going through the rounds of clinic visits and all that was entailed in the cancer treatment. And I could never have done that if I'd still been working in downtown Los Angeles. So even in that, the Lord knew what was coming and just arranged things so perfectly. And then, that led to other opportunities that I had not expected in the latter years of my career. So we praise the Lord for that. But trusting Him in whatever comes our way, I think, is the huge, learning opportunity when we're talking about growing in the love of God. It's seeing how He reaches out to us in love personally, and He does.
Well, Ray, it was funny as I was asking this question, I would think of how you might answer that question, how you live out the love of God. No, excuse me, how you've grown in the love of God. And I was not expecting the tithe answer, but I tell you, that is a real growth spot for many people. When you really hear what God says and you trust God in that. And Dawn and I have a very similar testimony in the fact that when we first got married, we had very little money in the bank. She was in school full time, and I'm working pumping gas for my dad at his gas station and living in Reseda. And we knew that if we gave our full tithe, that was going to leave us $100 in our checking account until my next paycheck. But we talked about it. We prayed about it. We gave that tithe, and the next morning I'm in the living room doing the laundry, and Donna's got a radio program on, and the radio program is a radio program I don't listen to, and they say, if your birthday's this time, call. So I called and I won $1,000. It's just like, So and I'm not saying that the Lord, but it was the day before we had prayed, should we tithe? We'd only give us $100 for the whole week. And we did. And then I won $1,000. And it was a real, and Donna has held on to that. She's reminded me that over the years a couple of times, how using that as an example of how obeying God has really paid off. And that's something that we've continued to do our whole married life, is tithing. But it was really a growth experience. It was truly, truly a growth experience.
Yeah.
But this isn't about my testimony. This is your testimony. So let me ask you this.
Maybe I should be interviewing you.
But it truly is. Tithing is one of those areas of how you grow in the love of God. How are you going to trust God? And the health issue you gave also is beautiful, because we never, when we're going through it, does God have control? Is God in control of this? That's what we're going through right now in this COVID. Is God in control? And I believe that God really is in control of this, and there's a reason he allows this to happen. So my last question for you, Ray, is how are you, or how have you lived out your love of God? Or how have you lived out your Christian life? Some of those things in your life since.
Yeah. Again, things that I didn't expect, but down through the years, I was first invited. We started coming to Bouquet in 1985. And I was first invited onto the board the following year, in 1986. I started on the board as chair of the finance committee. So I've been on and off the board many times over the years since 1986, but served him in that capacity. In the late 80s, Jackie Ogg was in charge of our Sunday school at that time, and she asked me if I would teach 5th and 6th grade in Sunday school. So I started doing some teaching there. I've spoken on and off in the church, when the pastor's been away, Pastor Babcock first, and then Pastor Billy in recent years. There were some things that I was thinking of that they're escaping me right now. But after the health scare with Margaret, I made contact with and got involved in a ministry that's based over in Simi Valley. I remember what I was going to say before I get into that. The pregnancy center, when that first started in I think 87 was when they first opened their doors. A few years later, in the late 80s, early 90s, I was on their board for a while. I was their treasurer for a couple of years. And so that was something that I was very happy to be able to be involved with as well, pregnancy center. But anyway, yes, so a few years ago, I was able to make contact with a ministry based in Simi Valley called Strategic Communications Group. Their main ministry is operating a radio network called Voice of Hope. And they have stations now here in California, broadcasting to Latin America, primarily in Spanish and some English, but primarily Spanish. There's a station in the Middle East, in northern Israel, broadcasting in Arabic and English to all of the countries in that region. We reach into Lebanon, Syria, Jordan, northern Israel, of course, Cyprus. It's a very dynamic work over there, and very much supplemented by social media. It's an AM station, 1287 AM, but very active on Facebook Live and other tools like that. And then a station down in Africa, in Zambia, has two powerful shortwave transmitters that reach into most of the English-speaking parts of Africa, covers the whole of West Africa, Central and Southern Africa. And just this week, we're starting to set up to launch a new Swahili service. I've been downloading Swahili gospel songs for the last couple of weeks and beginning to compile a Swahili music library for the station. So it's a people group with nearly 100 million speakers. There's about 16 million who speak it as their first language, and then the rest speak it as a second language after their local tribal language. It's spoken in many countries in East Africa and Central Africa. And we found that they have half an hour a day of Christian programming on shortwave that comes out of South Africa. And that's basically it, apart from some local FMs that are dotted around the various countries. But in Africa, many of the FMs are low power, 1 kilowatt or less. and their signal reaches like 15, 20 miles, and there's huge areas of countryside that can't be covered by FMs. So that's where our station on shortwave comes in. And in Africa, shortwave is still an extremely important means of communication. So as well as our English broadcasts, we're now getting set up with Swahili. And so the Lord has just allowed me to contribute to that ministry. Um, I have the title of vice president, but in essence, I'm in charge of setting up the studio playouts for both the Latin American service here and the African one. The staff in Africa all report to me. I've been able to travel many times now to Africa and to Israel to support the work and to meet the staff and deal with some local issues. So it's been a very interesting few years and not something I ever expected getting involved in. And again, something that I couldn't have done if I'd have still been working downtown Los Angeles in my IT job. So the Lord just opens up opportunities if you let him. And it's a very interesting seeing how the Lord allows you to live out the love of God.
Well, Ray, I thank you so much for your testimony because it means so much to me. I've known you for so very long, and it means so much for me to not just know what you have done, because I've known you since you've been a Christian or since 1985, but to see how you came to the Lord, how you've grown in the Lord, and how you've lived out your love of the Lord in multiple ministries and multiple capacities, using your gifts, your talents, and your abilities, administration and finance, because that's what you did in your corporate life too. You were a vice president for Transamerica. And
Senior vice president.
A what?
Senior vice president.
Ooh, senior vice president. See, and so you're using those gifts, talents, and abilities that God has given you to expand the kingdom, to grow the kingdom, and to serve the local church, and not just the local church, but also was it Zimbabwe? Zambia, excuse me, and Israel, and here down to Latin America. That's just. Did you ever think you were going to be a missionary?
No.
Well, Ray, let me ask you one last question. Do you have any closing words of encouragement that you would like to leave?
I think for the people watching, I'm assuming I'm mostly speaking to Christians here. I would say it's been an interesting exercise for me to put my thoughts in terms of how did I awaken to the love of God? How did I grow in the love of God? How have I been able to live out the love of God? And, we have the 401 class in which we teach people how to share their story. And this is a very effective way of doing it. So I would encourage you all to think about your own story in these terms. And when you have opportunity to share why you're a Christian or why you go to Bouquet Canyon Church, have that personal element to be able to share, because nobody can argue against your personal story. It's your story. It's what's happened to you. And I'm just happy to be able to share mine. So thank you, David.
Well, thank you, Ray, and I'm happy you're able to share your story with us also. And adding to that, not in adding to that, but the importance of sharing your faith. We have a lost and dying world, and we have a lot of people that are very hopeless. And when you see the reports come out from the CDC of first responders at alarming rates that have had suicidal thoughts, or the suicide rates going on with young people between 18 and 20, I think it's 25 or 28 years old. There's a lot of hopelessness going on, and your radio station in Israel is broadcasting into Lebanon, where there's probably a lot of need for hope. And so I just thank you for what you're doing. I thank you for what you've done, and I'm just proud to be in ministry with you and serving the Lord side by side with you and the Robinson clan. So thank you, Ray, and God bless you, and enjoy the rest of your day.
God bless you too.
Bye-bye now. Well, I hope you enjoyed that in watching it as much as I did interviewing Ray. Just a great testimony. Just seeing his life, the way he's trusted God throughout his entire walk with the Lord has just been amazing. So I just want to say we miss you, we love you, we can't wait to meet together. And remember, There are people watching you that need to hear the Lord, to need to hear about the Lord and the love of God. So don't be shy, be bold and courageous, live out your faith, and share your faith with others. God bless. Bye bye.